Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Reaction Show. My name is Andrew Velez. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Joel Dehls. We are here after Thursday Night Football. The Jets absolutely lay the smackdown to the New England Patriots, beating them on their home turf for the first time in 8 years, 24-3. Mr. Dehls, I'll give you the floor. One, how are you doing? And two, how are you feeling after a dominating victory on Thursday night?
I don't know if I need the floor today. I think if anyone needs the floor, it should be you to
Oh,
explain
okay.
yourself, how much shit you've been talking about these Jets after week one against the 49ers. It's over. They're a wild card team at best. And not only just after the 49ers, you sat through that week, watched us beat the Titans on the road, sat through
Mid.
that, watched some film, I'm sure, and woke up this morning and one of the first tweets of the day was, New England's going to beat the Jets. What? I don't need the floor. I think you should have the floor right now.
Pretty comfortable. I can definitely do this. I'll say this: amazing win for you guys. This is by far and away the best you looked. Now you're feeling very high and mighty after this win, and I would, especially since you haven't beaten the New England Patriots in New York. I should say in New Jersey, since you were before you could have a drink. I'll say this: Aaron Rodgers looked amazing. I was not anticipating that the offensive line for the Patriots would be as poor as it was. I stand on what I said. You guys looked extremely terrible against the San Francisco 49ers. I stand on also saying the win versus the Titans was sloppy. You guys let Will Levis look a lot better than he probably should have. But I also will say you guys came out here tonight, Thursday Night Football, on a short week, and you absolutely dominated start to finish. Time of possession wasn't even close. 40 minutes to 15 minutes or 40 minutes to something along those lines. The lack of time that they had the football for was, I think it was 19 minutes actually. That being said, I still am not overly moved. You beat up on a beat up team in New
Why are we
England.
gonna lose?
You were going to lose because I thought Ramondre Stevenson would have a better game than he did.
What
I thought
happened?
that, hey, listen, like I said, great
I'm
performance
locked
out of the
up.
New York Jets. You guys dominated both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and even still dominating was 24 points. You held time of possession, you killed a lot of clock, you did exactly what you had to do, especially on a short week. Don't do anything overly pretty. Even still, we haven't seen Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers be 100% on the same page. And we saw one of the better throws from Aaron Rodgers, ironically, to Garrett Wilson. So still, great win. We've seen a lot of great football from New England. This was definitely not a great showing by the New England Patriots. That's why I believe they win. I believe that their defense would play better than they did today. I didn't think that Tyler Conklin would go for almost 100 yards. I will say that the Jets definitely showed up and they played the brand of football that you were anticipating. But of course, we're not going to be moved by a game versus New England. It was a great win. I thought that New England would win. However, you got bigger fish to fry than New England. With me, you can talk all the shit you want. In the bigger picture, you still have bigger fish to fry that's not just the New England Patriots.
Well, we'll move to 3-1 after we smack around those Broncos next
Oh,
week.
most
That'll be great.
definitely.
We'll go up against Minnesota, probably smack those guys too. Sam Darnold
All
can't do
right.
nothing against this
Okay.
defense. They're just like overreaction after week one. There's a reason why I didn't overreact the other way, because this Jets defense for the last 2 years under Robert Saleh has been one of the best in football. And I wasn't going to let one game against one of the best offenses and best offensive minds sway me into thinking all of a sudden this defense was going to be dog shit. They absolutely locked down Ramondre Stevenson, who was going into this week one of the best running backs in football, right? Probably this season alone, playing at a top 10 level, absolutely destroyed the Bengals in week one. We had a stat on the show today that 60% of his runs he was getting first contact at the line of scrimmage or before, and he was just breaking tackles. Wasn't happening tonight, not against this Jets defense. And I think why I'm so high and why I'm up here talking so much shit. They scored 24 points. This Jets offense to me isn't clicking. Him and Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson are not clicking right now. This is the duo that has potential to be top 5, top 10 in the league, and they haven't exactly been on the same page. But even though they haven't been on the same page, Allen Lazard looks like a legit wide receiver 3 again. He looks like a guy that you could go out there and, not for fantasy, but for real life, have as your third receiver, and you're comfortable about it. Mike Williams, again, had a couple nice 50-50 balls. He also dropped one in the end zone that was this close to coming down for a touchdown. And Tyler Conklin, finally, this is a guy that was killing it all training camp, was absolutely destroying it in training camp per the beat reporters, and he wasn't really doing anything the first 2 weeks of the season. He comes out here, has nearly 100 yards on 5 receptions, but above all of that, Aaron Rodgers looked as mobile as he's had in the last 5 years. This was a guy who the first 2 weeks of the season, he was not moving in and out of the pocket. He was not moving at all. And this game, the first or second play, he scrambles out to the left, gets 6 or 7 yards, gets a first down. Later in the game, scrambles out to the right, gets 6 or 7 yards, slides down. He was constantly making plays on the run. I think he was perfect outside the pocket. I think it was 5 for 5 while sprinting, was making big plays to Tyler Conklin, had a beautiful throw to Jeremy Ruckert on the right sideline as well. It's one thing to go out there and dominate the New England Patriots, because I get it. At the end of the day, it's Jacoby Brissett. When the Jets are going up against Josh Allen and Mahomes and all these dudes in the AFC, it's going to look a lot different. But the reason why everyone should open their eyes is because of how Aaron Rodgers just looked. This is as good of a game as Aaron Rodgers has played since his MVP season. And we're just into week 3 coming off an Achilles injury. And as I mentioned at the start, this is without Garrett Wilson really being 100% on the same page as him. Last thing I'll say about this Jets offense, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen could easily be the best running back duo in the NFL right now. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, I feel like they got that on lock. But what we see from Breece Hall and Braylon Allen is elite. We know how great Breece Hall is already. Braylon Allen, to me, was my favorite running back coming out of this draft class. What he did as Wisconsin, 17-year-old freshman, was going out there just dominating people. You see the combination of size and speed he has. He's averaging over 5 yards per carry. And shout out to Nathaniel Hackett, because he has got shit on for the last couple of seasons, deservedly so. I thought he had a great game plan today. And I love, it's crazy, I'm saying this, the creativity we've seen from him, having Braylon Allen and Breece Hall out in the field at times, getting them both involved in the running game, and it never felt like one was getting way too much work than the other. So if you're getting this level of offense with Aaron Rodgers looking like this, and all of a sudden, oh shit, Mike Williams might look like a wide receiver 2 again. Oh shit, Allen Lazard looks like a legit wide receiver 3. Tyler Conklin is someone who was last season one of the better tight ends. He was just kind of thrown under the rug because it was the Jets and it was Zach Wilson. But this Jets team, this is what we were dreaming of. This is what we were hoping of. Showed up. Defense showed up. I'm having a fucking ball today.
Listen, if I were you, I'd be ecstatic as well. You guys haven't played well against the New England Patriots for a good portion of your life. The last 2 times that you faced off, though, you are 2-0, one without Aaron Rodgers, one with. And without a doubt, the takeaway from this game is not the Jets defense, because you kind of anticipated that with a banged up offensive line from the Patriots. The takeaway is most definitely Aaron Rodgers. He was throwing to whoever he wanted outside of Garrett Wilson on a consistent basis, and it was positive plays. A standout, you mentioned Conklin. I talked about him a little bit when I first spoke. Conklin, 93 yards. He brings in 5 catches, 6 targets. This is what you and I had spoken about prior to the season starting. If there was a sleeper tight end for people to look at, it was Conklin. We've seen him go and be you have in the past other options that he can go out there and he can utilize when he was on the Green Bay Packers. I'm blanking on bro's name, the tight end that had double touchdowns. My God, for the Packers, I'm blanking on his name. Say it one more time.
Mercedes Lewis?
No, not Mercedes. The white dude.
No,
if you figure it out while I'm speaking, let me know, because I'm blanking so hardcore. But regardless, it was an average tight end that he went out there and he made fantasy relevant. Conklin actually has a decent skill set, had a career high in receiving yards for breaking over 600 yards for the first time in his career. Now with Aaron Rodgers, you would anticipate that would get a tick above. And so I look at the Jets, and I agree with you. This offense isn't at 100%. We still haven't seen Breece be the efficient back on the ground that we all anticipated. Thank you very much, Kate. And it was Robert Tunyon. That's exactly. And shout out to Justin. Shout out to Sith App and Jay. Shout out to the Fifth Down podcast. All of them got it. I'm thinking of Robert Tunyon, where he had an unbelievable fantasy season because he just caught a bunch of touchdowns. The thing with Conklin, though, is he can separate and he can get open. And so if you have Conklin that you have to worry about, now it alleviates a little bit of pressure off Garrett, and now you can go ahead and you can start to get on the same page with your wide receiver 1. But Aaron Rodgers looked vintage. He looked comfortable in the pocket. He looked like he had control of this offense from start to finish, and every drive he had that they were milking the clock. I look at this performance by the Jets, and I can't say anything negative about it. There was nothing to really nitpick or say anything negative for the fact that you went out there and you executed at the highest of levels. However, do it against a team that is not going to be one of the bottom feeders. And of course, I'll be even more respectful than I am being tonight. But again, we spoke about this week 1. I'll speak about it when you go against Minnesota. I'll speak about it when you go up against the Buffalo Bills. You beat and perform against the better teams, and then you get your due diligence. Until then, you still have to wait, and you still have to wait for getting your ultimate praise. But for now, of course, you enjoy this W. And strictly talking about fantasy football, I know Garrett Wilson had a touchdown today, but 5 catches, 9 targets, 33 yards is not who you drafted in your first 2 and or maybe back end first round. We're still waiting for this blow up game from Garrett Wilson, and it's understood, especially when you have Christian Gonzalez going out there, a L'Jarius Sneed. Week 1, you guys matched up against the San Francisco 49ers. And even so, we still saw Garrett Wilson getting a majority of looks. However, it hasn't led to the overwhelming statistics that you would anticipate from, of course. Wasn't sure if it was just you or me. We're here. It's not what you were anticipating from Garrett. However, you still anticipate as the weeks go on that the more and more Aaron Rodgers and him have a connection, they'll start to get back on the same page. However, for right now, I don't love what I'm seeing from Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. It just seems like they are not on the same page. The timing of their routes, the timing of Aaron Rodgers' throws, it just doesn't seem like they're connected right now. But you obviously have to stay optimistic because, of course, you use such high draft capital on Garrett Wilson. Are you panicking? Are you one of those that obviously you're a Jets fan, so I think I know your answer, but 3 weeks in, you've gotten double digits from him 2 of the 3 weeks. Are we still feeling a one way or the other?
Does my mic sound better now? Better or worse?
It sounds okay.
Okay. Well, I'll keep messing with it. I'm not worried about Garrett Wilson just yet. 2 out of the 3 weeks he led the team in targets. 1 week he didn't lead it was against the Titans, and that was when Breece Hall led the team. So still led it amongst all wide receivers. And there was a couple plays this week where they were just off. I mean, there was one play, it wouldn't matter because there was an illegal formation, but Aaron Rodgers rolls out to the right. Beautiful ball down the sideline. Garrett Wilson's wide open, just overthrows him by a yard or 2. Another play in the 4th quarter, I believe, where Garrett Wilson's wide open on a seam route, and he just kind of underthrows him to the inside. So they're super close. But I think Aaron Rodgers had shown, and he knows, he even said it after the game. He said, me and 5 aren't on the same page right now. When we are, it's going to get scary. He understands. Garrett understands. They're not clicking right now. And what we've seen throughout Aaron Rodgers' history, and we mentioned this too on the when we do it, I think our wide receiver shows, just doing our predictions, our rankings. Aaron Rodgers hyperfixates on his wide receiver 1, and I think over time, as they get more and more comfortable with each other, we're going to see that. Right? Garrett Wilson is still easily going to lead this team in targets. He's still clearly the best wide receiver on this team, and if you have this upside where Aaron Rodgers, any given night can go out there and throw for nearly 300 yards, and he could scramble and extend plays, and the Jets are going to be able to move the ball down the field and have touchdown opportunities, I'm not panicking on Garrett Wilson. And if there's any fantasy managers out there who are panicking, I'm going to try to acquire him.
And now the last thing I want to talk about when we're talking about the Jets offense is Breece Hall. Breece Hall was one of our favorite guys coming in. And obviously, he's one of our favorite players regardless. However, on the ground, we have not seen him be efficient. I'll give him his credit versus Tennessee. 4.4 yards a carry isn't bad, but 3.3 against San Francisco, 3.3 tonight against the New England Patriots. We know he can be better than what he's shown us. He's obviously had the talent. He's proven to be an efficient back. I'll say this, your pass blocking unit is excellent. Your run blocking unit needs work, and that has been evident these first few weeks, and I think Breece Hall is good enough to still overcome that. Obviously has had over 15 fantasy points in 3 straight weeks, so the fantasy output is there, and he is doing this while not being efficient on the ground. Has scored a touchdown in 3 straight weeks, 2 rushing, 1 receiving. Really still gets targeted a ton, has seen over 5 targets per game, for 5 targets at least every game to start this season. I think Breece Hall still is a safe running back one. And imagine what he can do if he were to be a little bit more efficient. In fantasy football, Breece Hall is going to be still a stud, but looking at the efficiency purposes, I can hear narratives being started on his name, even though this run blocking unit is not the greatest.
All right. Unplug the mic, plugged it back in. Better, worse,
Hey,
same?
it's not popping. It doesn't sound like you're underwater. And for that,
Okay.
we'll take it and we'll move.
Sometimes you just got to take things in, take them out, put them back in. You know what I'm
Yep,
saying?
knew that's where you
The
were going with
last
it.
thing, the last thing I'll say, just from a fantasy perspective, from this game, Demario Douglas was the leading receiver on this team. Nine targets, 7 receptions, 69 yards. Brissett only had 98 yards, and Demario Douglas had 70 of them. Coming into the year, I thought Douglas was going to be the wide receiver one of this team. Then Jalen Polk was getting some hype. Javon Baker from Inter was getting some hype. Of course, Hunter Henry, 2 for 9, an absolute dud after the crazy game he had last week. So Demario Douglas is, listen, you're probably not going to pick him up, but he was someone at the end of last season, middle end of last season, was really solid for PPR leagues. I think full PPR, he's someone that's like flex worthy week to week. Still, of course, a bit risky, but just deeper leagues. He's really probably the only player outside of Stevenson that maybe has some interest, but even still, we're talking probably like 14-man leagues and you're starting 3 receivers.
And also keeping on topic with the New England side of things, Ramondre Stevenson will not have this bad of a game moving forward. I think the Jets had an excellent game plan, and I think they also, on top of having a really great game plan, executed at the highest of levels. They were just getting them off the field. They could do nothing on the offensive side of the ball. The Patriots, whether it was running the football, passing the football, you mentioned it, didn't even have 100 yards throwing, only threw the ball 18 times. This offense was non-existent. They had a ton of pressure onto Jacoby Brissett. You could see that he was banged up also. We got a little taste of Drake May. I liked what I saw, considering stayed strong in the pocket, even though that pocket was collapsing. But for Ramondre Stevenson, because that's obviously the guy that we look at that has the most fantasy upside, I believe that he'll be fine. I think that the Jets just had an unbelievable showing. And by unbelievable, I just mean, of course, they shut shit down after being poor 2 games in a row against the running back. I thought they were awesome tonight, so I have to give some credit where credit is due. Do you have any other remarks for this Thursday night game? If you want to talk a little bit of shit, now's your time.
Nah, I think I got most of my shit talking out. Ramondre did get banged up in the middle of this game. He came back, but he missed like 2 or 3 drives in that second quarter after he got flagged for a face masking penalty. He might have like messed up his pinky or finger or something like that. Yeah, Ramondre's going to be better going forward, but the one fear I had about Ramondre entering the season was just the Patriots are going to be, at least we thought, were going to be really bad. And who knows what team, the Patriots really are, or what we saw in the first couple of weeks where you beat the Bengals, nearly beat the Seahawks, or are you closer to what we just saw on Thursday Night Football where you're just getting smacked around time for time? I think it's going to be matchup dependent. So in those games where New England can't get anything moving offensively, the offensive line doesn't show up, it's not 0.3 points because of the fumble for Ramondre, but the floor might not be like, a solid RB2. It might be a bit lower than that.
All right, let's read some super chats real quick, and then we'll get on to our starts and sits of the week. Shout out to Damon. He says, watching this from a cruise. Oh, my God, you're a goat. We love you. 5 Bills from the Bahamas, gang. You're a legend. Oh, and by the way, Pittman or Flowers in the flex spot. Okay, so Zay going up against Dallas. I like that matchup.
Love that.
Pittman, I just can't trust what's going on with the Colts right now, especially with AR being this inconsistent as a passer, going up against Chicago, which means he's probably going to be matched up with Jalen Johnson a lot. I'm leaning Flowers in this situation.
Yeah, this is easy Flowers for me. It should be a higher scoring game as well than the Indy-Chicago one. You also have Josh Downs coming back this week, who is going to eat up a couple more targets. And Alec Pierce has kind of been like the deep down the field guy the first 2 weeks of the season. So Michael Pittman's a solid wide receiver, but him and Anthony Richardson just don't really have much chemistry right now.
Justin Marion says the Michael Pittman Jr. fall off needs to be studied. Listen, I pulled it up. He's had at least 7 targets in both of these games. The output simply has not been there. He's gone for 4 catches, 31 yards week 1, and then 3 catches, 21 yards. He's seeing 7 yards per catch, around 3 yards per target It hasn't been a great showing for Michael Pittman. And honestly, I don't expect it to get better immediately. We've seen Anthony Richardson be a big play guy, and that's obviously exciting the fantasy community. However, when it comes to talking about Michael Pittman, it's one of those we have to see it to buy back into it. We were one of those that we weren't the highest on Pittman coming in, understanding this was going to be a run-first offense. And we've kind of seen that a little bit, at least versus the Packers. Week 1, AR was just letting that thing go deep to Alec Pierce. We had a Dorley catch. Doolin, thank you very much. Doolin, who had a nice play to get into the end zone. But when it comes to Michael, he's been the odd man out. And honestly, I don't know when it's going to be his time to shine, especially with AR being as inconsistent as he's been as a passer.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, next dono. Shout out to Riles. $10 dono says, verse dono to the GOATs. You're the GOAT.
Riles.
Starting off 0-2 in a 10-man league, but got K1, Derrick Henry, Mixon, Amon-Ra, Drake London, Evan Ingram, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice. All right, this team's fire. Should you panic? No, you have some very fun players. You know I love Rashee Rice more than the average human being. Nico Collins is one of the best receivers in the NFL. You have Amon-Ra, who's a dog. Derrick Henry and Mixon. I believe in the upside of Derrick Henry. Mixon is a little bit concerning for me, but you have Brian Robinson, who has a really good matchup this week going up against the Bengals. You have Drake London too. Honestly, if I'm you, I may be looking to trade maybe a Drake London. I feel like that's the piece that I feel most comfortable trading and trying to get an upgrade at that running back spot. If you go and you pair London and Mixon together, you could probably get a pretty strong upgrade at your running back. That's just my opinion, but don't panic. You have a lot of talent on this squad, and I feel like better days are to come.
Yeah, this team's amazing. Sometimes you start 0-2. It looks like this is probably a scenario where you have like the most points against or second most points against in your league, and you just gotten a bit unlucky. Obviously Drew mentioned it, the running back spot, also the tight end spot, right? Evan Ingram is someone who is banged up right now, probably isn't going to play, but it's also hard to look around at the tight end landscape and find guys you want, right? Like the number one guy that is the hottest name is Brock Bowers. And there's probably whoever has him in your league is probably not looking to move him because he looks like a guy that could be a top 2-3 tight ends for the rest of the season. So if you could upgrade at tight end, Brock Bowers is one of those targets I'm looking to go and get. But everyone else, I'm really not looking to move anyone. Drake London, like you said, Drew, is probably the one piece I'm comfortable to move. But Amon-Ra, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice as your 3 wide receivers is about as good as it gets.
Next donation comes back from Justin Marion, a legend, $7 donation, calm. He goes, I got MPJ, Pickens, Wandale, and JSN. Only can start 2 of the 4. Who y'all got? I think Pickens, to me, is a lock of these 4 right now. And with the target share I just saw from JSN, honestly, I feel myself leaning JSN over MPJ. The Seahawks should be in for a good one against Miami, who haven't been the greatest defending the pass. One of the worst when it comes to DVOA in the National Football League. So for that, Pickens going up against the Chargers, it'll show us a lot about the Chargers. To me, I'm going to trust Pickens in this. I feel like he's kind of matchup proof. And JSN, who had 16 targets last week.
Yeah, Wandale's a bit tougher too. Week 1, he had 12 targets. This past week against Washington, only 4 targets, 2 receptions. So if that's what the floor is against the worst defense in football, Wandale's probably not in consideration for me. Pickens is a lock. I think you're really deciding between JSN and Michael Pittman. But what we just saw from JSN feels like a breakout game. Like that feels like the first game that we're going to look back on and say, this is where it started, where he took over that wide receiver 2 role. The only thing I worry about is I think Seattle could go out there and dominate Miami. I don't think Skylar Thompson can really keep up with what the Seahawks can be able to do offensively. But even still, JSN was just way too involved in that offense last week to sit him. So I would start Pickens. I would start JSN.
And shout out to Santos. He just sent a super sticker. I don't know what that is, but that's pretty awesome. Nice. You're the GOAT, Santos. All right, let's start it off. Our starts and sits of week 3. I'll get us going. First off, you know the rule of thumb. Starts of the week. If you're playing against the Washington Commanders, you better believe that I'm making you a start of the week. Joe Burrow, fire him up. We haven't seen the best from Joe Burrow to start this season. And understanding that the Washington Commanders are by far and away the worst secondary in football, this is the week that we look at Joe Burrow and he goes for over 300 and can have 3 touchdowns. This is a get right week for the Cincinnati Bengals. And we don't need numbers to go out there and tell you why Cincinnati is going to go out there and dominate. As an 0-2 team, you are desperate. This is a team that has aspirations of making an AFC championship game of course they want to get to the Super Bowl, but at least they want to go and fight for that AFC spot because they feel like they're the team that contends best with the Kansas City Chiefs. Going up against Washington, I've never been more confident in an awesome showing from a team and by a player. Give me Joe Burrow. Honestly, if I could, I would have made Joe Burrow my start. I would have made Jamar Chase my start. I would have gone 2 wide receivers. I would have trusted T. Higgins that much, made T. Higgins my second wide receiver start of the week. But I'm deciding not to abuse the Washington power, and I'm only going to go Joe Burrow versus Washington.
Shit, if you have Zach Moss, I think you could start him. If you have Mike Gesicki, you stay in the fire too. But my quarterback star of the week is going to be Derek Carr going up against those Philadelphia Eagles. There's no way you could sit Derek Carr right now. The offense is so explosive. It just makes it really difficult for him to fail. On the road against a very respectable at a minimum respectable Dallas defense, I think we would probably say they were good to above average entering this week. He had only 11 completions, but it went for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. If they can ever, them being the Saints, find a team that can keep up with them and they're not scoring, maybe they don't score 40 points in 2.5 quarters. Maybe they keep it to 21 or 24 points and the other team can keep up. Maybe Derek Carr can attempt 30 to 35, get crazy 40 passes. But these first couple of weeks, we're talking about 20 to 25 attempts per game, 11 to 15 completions per game. And he's still the quarterback 2 in fantasy football. The play action they're running, the motion they're running, the Rashid Shaheed breakout. Chris Olave, who had a bit of a bounce-back game last week, having 4 receptions, 480 yards. Alvin Kamara looking as good as ever. This offense is for real, right? I think they proved that in week 2. And week 3 against Philly, I think Philly just showed us what they are. This is a defense that can get exposed. Kirk Cousins, who struggled for a decent part of this game, also went down there in that fourth quarter in 5 plays and said, I could go like 70 yards in about a minute and a half, and you can't stop me. Derek Carr going up against Philly, he should be a top 10 quarterback again this week.
Now, let's go into our quarterback sits of the week. Now, this one was really simple for me because I respect the Pittsburgh Steelers defense more than a good amount of people. And I feel like now it's starting to become popular opinion that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is probably going to be, if not the best, at least a top 3 defense in the league. First 2 weeks, they went out there, they blanketed absolutely Kirk Cousins, and they did the same thing to Bo Nix. That one was less of a surprise. But now going up against the Chargers and Justin Herbert, who's coming into the week banged up with an ankle injury, I'm not anticipating Justin Herbert's going to go out there and ball. And regardless, Justin Herbert has not been that productive as a fantasy quarterback over these last couple of seasons. And going into this matchup, you have Herbert, who has not broken 12 fantasy points in either week. I'm not anticipating that this is the week he goes out and goes berserk and throws for over $150, which he hasn't thrown for yet this season. He went for a 144 week 1 versus the Raiders, 130 week 2 versus the Panthers. Did have 2 touchdowns, but wasn't good enough to make him a strong fantasy finish going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I respect the hell out of Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, but Alex Highsmith and, of course, TJ Watt are different breed of edge rushers. So to me, I think that it's going to be a lot more difficult on him and the Chargers offense to find success. So I'm going to go with Justin Herbert as my sit of the week.
Who would you, in the same matchup, would you rather start Fields or Justin Herbert?
God, I guess I'd go Fields for the upside, but even still, he hasn't eclipsed more than 11 fantasy points himself. It's the battle of the fantasy mids, because obviously we know Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. However, I guess I would go Justin Herbert I guess I would go with Justin Fields, feeling that the fact that the Chargers defense is not as good and the upside for him as a rusher is always going to be there. I'm going with Justin Fields.
Yeah, this is a game that it feels like outside of George Pickens and like probably J.K. Dobbins, you're not really excited to start anyone in this matchup. I'm going to talk about some other sits later from that game. My sit of the week at the quarterback position, he was my sit last week, keeping him my sit this week. Trevor Lawrence. He's just not somebody that you could start right now in fantasy football. Through the first 2 weeks of the season, he has yet to throw for more than 220 passing yards. He only has 1 passing touchdown. In his last 13 starts, he just has 1 game of 300 or more passing yards. The offense right now is just super inconsistent. They do have, I believe they're leading the league in 20+ yard plays. So those explosives are there. Shout out to Brian Thomas, who's gotten a handful of those. But it's really been kind of the shorter and easy stuff that they really can't get going right. And I think part of the reason why is just how they're using this team, how they're using their offensive pieces. Brian Thomas, as we've been saying for the last 2 weeks, this is your best offensive weapon, probably outside of Travis Etienne. The fact that he's only seen 4 targets per game is inexcusable. This is a guy that should be seen at a minimum 7 targets. He should be moved all over the field, at the X, into your slot. He should be the focal point of this offense, especially the passing attack. And going up against the Buffalo Bills is going to be awfully difficult. Week 2, of course, they played Tua, who got banged up. But even when he was healthy, they were not able to do anything offensively. Then week 1, going up against Kyler Murray, held him to just 14 fantasy points. And we saw how explosive that offense can be just a week later going up against the Los Angeles Rams. So this is mostly 2 quarterback leagues because I'm assuming in a 1 quarterback lead, you have some better options like Joe Burrow, like you mentioned, Derek Carr, who probably not anymore, but had a potential to be on the waiver wire. I think Trevor Lawrence is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But right now for fantasy football, this offense has to get figured out. And I'm not looking to start him in a tough matchup against Buffalo.
Now, moving on to our running back starts of the week, I'm going to start us off here with Tony Pollard. If you listen to the Pigside podcast, which should be coming out probably later tonight, we did our prize picks locks of the week, and mine was Tony Pollard more than 59.5. I look at these last couple of weeks from Tony, and the opportunity has been there. Has seen more than 16 carries in both of these games, 16 in the week 1, 17 week 2 versus the Jets. He went and he rushed for 82 yards versus the Chicago Bears, 62 versus the Jets, but he was very active in the passing game versus the Jets. 6 targets, brought in 5 of those, 40 yards. And I'm looking at his matchup this week versus the Packers. The Packers have given up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. We saw JT in only 12 carries, rush for over 100 yards. And then week 1, Saquon Barkley gets into the end zone 3 times and goes for over 100. I'm anticipating that they trust Tony Pollard in this game. The game script will be there. I think it's going to be a close game, especially if Malik Willis does start at quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. So to me, I love the play. I'm running with Tony Pollard as my start.
Love to hear that. I'm starting Tony Pollard in our league of record this week. Had a couple of injuries. Tajay Spears is also a bit banged up. Didn't practice Wednesday. Was back at practice today, Thursday, but does appear limited with an ankle injury. So we could see potentially Pollard getting some more touches. He's been the clear number 1 in this backfield. And you mentioned how great of a matchup Green Bay is. Moving on to my running back star of the week. You mentioned him a little bit ago. Brian Robinson going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. He's been elite this season. I think the first couple years into the league, Brian Robinson kind of got labeled as like slower, not someone who could really evade tackles or break tackles, but he's been excellent this year. He's RB12 in fantasy, had a touchdown and 50 receiving yards in week 1. So we could see even with Austin Eckler, he is used in the passing game, then had over 100 rushing yards in week 2. He's 3rd in yards per carry at 6 and 3rd in yards after contact per attempt. We saw in week 1, Ramondre Stevenson went insane, 130 rushing yards against the Cincinnati Bengals. And now Brian Robinson gets his chance. I even think Austin Eckler is a pretty decent play in this matchup too. He's looked just eye test wise like a completely different running back from what we've seen last season, probably at 100% health. And this is probably going to be a game where Washington has to keep up. I still think Brian Robinson, as we saw in week 1, is involved in this passing game, so he shouldn't be scared off by that. But if you need a flex option, if you had someone, for example, like Joe Mixon, and you weren't able to pick up a Cam Akers or someone off the waiver wire, Carson Steele, and you have Austin Eckler on your bench, I think he's someone you could start as well.
And you mentioned Joe Mixon. I get perfectly into my sit of the week. I'm running with Joe Mixon. Now, this is an interesting one because Joe Mixon, it doesn't seem as if he's probably going to play this week. Right now, listed as questionable, has not practiced this week. However, even still with that in mind, I don't love the matchup versus the Minnesota Vikings. Right now, they've given up the 6th fewest, they've given up one of the fewest points per game to fantasy running backs. They've given up a bottom 7 few to running backs. And I look at Joe Mixon and what he was not able to do versus the Chicago Bears. Only played on 47% of snaps, did have that ankle injury, but did come back in the game, which is what kind of leaves me optimistic about him playing, for the fact of also he is a vet. You give him that rest. There is an opportunity that he does play. And from week 1, where he went against the Indianapolis Colts, who now we've come to understand that was a horrible rush defense, to go up against the Bears and only 9 carries, average less than 3 yards a carry. Did have 5 targets, 3 catches for 25 yards, but I respect what this Minnesota Vikings defense has been doing, and I respect them to keep that up, especially while Joe Mixon, if he were to go into this game banged up, I just don't love what that outcome would be.
If Joe Mixon is out, Dameon Pierce is out, does Cam Akers move you at all? Looks like he would step into a bell cow-like role. Not at all?
No. Minnesota's defense is legit, and I don't know if he would have a very solid showing.
Cam Akers or Carson Steele going up against the Falcons?
Oh, I would trust the Kansas City offense. Yeah. Okay. I like that. I would trust the Kansas City offense.
Okay. Yeah. We don't really do like real waivers on the show, right? Like Monday is our day to kind of like talk about what just happened, and then Thursdays are starting sits of the week. But I was the one who in our league, I was like, I don't know if I want Steele, if I want Hunt, if I want P. Ryan. I had Pacheco too. Steele, the only tiebreaker I had, because I feel like he was like the hottest name on the waivers, is if any of them break out and is like an RB2, it's probably gonna be Carson Steele, right? Samaje P. Ryan, we know, is kind of just locked into that pass catching role, maybe has the highest floor. Kareem Hunt, I know there's still, I don't know if it's just name value with Kareem Hunt right now, because the last time we saw him on the field, he just wasn't that good. The coaches were giving him a little bit of hype. I don't think he's going to be playing this upcoming week. He's still in the practice squad. There's a world where he could overtake that, but I do think Carson still gets the first crack at it. Anyway, moving on to my running back sit of the week. Talking about the Steelers and Chargers games, I'm sitting both of these Steelers running backs, Najee Harris as well as Jalen Warren, going up against the Chargers. It's a bit of a chicken or the egg type thing with the Chargers. See how great this run defense actually is, because so far they're probably the best rush defense in football. Number 1 in rush EPA, 2nd in success rate. But then you see their opponents. Week 1, you played the Las Vegas Raiders, who have not been able to get anything going with Zamir White / Alexander Madison, at least on the ground. Madison's been decent in a pass catching role. Then week 2, going up against the Panthers. We're talking about Hubbard, Miles Sanders, probably the worst running back room in the NFL right now. But the volume's been there for Najee, which I think the one thing you could lay your hat on if you do have to start him. 37 carries through 2 games, but the efficiency is still Najee Harris level efficiency, under 4 yards per carry. And as Jalen Warren gets more involved in this offense, as we saw from week 1 to week 2, now entering week 3, I think we could see those carries potentially go down. So some other running backs that I would start over him: Tony Pollard, your star of the week; Brian Robinson, my star of the week, just in way better matchups for week 3. And then as well as J.K. Dobbins in this same game. Even though I think the Steelers defense is better, J.K. Dobbins just has an explosiveness that Najee Harris doesn't have. J.K. Dobbins has shown these first couple of weeks he can take a 40 or 50 yard a run to the house. Don't think Najee Harris really has that in them. So both of them are a bit risky, but if you said start Najee or start JK, I would be starting JK.
That's fair. And I promise you, I contemplated making J.K. Dobbins my sit of the week. And that's not a J.K. thing, because we love him. The Pittsburgh Steelers are incredible, and they've allowed the 5th fewest points to fantasy running backs. So that's where my hesitation stems from. But I agree. I'm definitely starting J.K. over Najee and Jalen Warren. Jalen Warren, who has been a disappointment up until this point, and a lot of that could be deemed to that hamstring injury that he did come to the season with. But again, I still don't feel great about that JK matchup. Now, let's read this super chat before we get into our wide receiver studs and duds. Daniel Guerrero says, Dehls, calm down. You sound like a Finns fan. Like when they beat trash teams. Dolphins fans went crazy, but when they face Super Bowl teams and lose, they have nothing to say.
Dang. I probably do sound like a Dolphin fan, but I'm going to be here when we beat the Bills, when we beat whoever's on the schedule, Texans later in the year. It's going to happen, man. We don't got to worry about that.
Your silver lining is that you may not play Tua, because we know what happens when the Dolphins and Jets play when Tua is on the field. Now, let's move on to our wide receiver starts of the week. Now, I said it. I'm going to be fair. Only one Washington Commander team. So, again, I will not be using Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, who I contemplated. Even off a hamstring, I still think that T. Higgins can come in week 1 and be a dog. They would not send him out if he wasn't at 100%. But my wide receiver start of the week, this is the easiest decision that I think I've ever made in my life. Brandon Ayuk versus the LA Rams. We saw what Marvin Harrison was able to do versus the LA Rams in week 1. We saw what Jameson Williams was able to do week 1 versus the LA Rams. Brandon Ayuk, when Deebo Samuel does not play, gets a 29% target share And that has been the last 3 years when Brandon Ayuk has been on the field and Deebo Samuel has not. Not only is Deebo Samuel not going to be on the field, but there's a strong chance that we do not see George Kittle either. We've been waiting on that Brandon Ayuk game. It wasn't going to happen week 1 versus the Jets. He did drop a touchdown. Week 2, it was maybe in the cards because they were playing Minnesota. He also had a ball where he was in the end zone, but he didn't come down with it because, of course, him and Brock Purdy just couldn't sync up there. I believe this is the week. If you have been a Brandon Ayuk manager and you've been waiting and you began upset at him, trust me, you get rewarded this week. Fire up Brandon Ayuk. He's going to go absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that start. My start of the week is going to be Jameson Williams going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Do you know where he sits right now in fantasy, wide receiver wise? 4? Okay, maybe it's like a different league. I have him wide receiver 5. But he's been sensational, right? And this isn't just like he's gotten a couple of deep shots down the field and he's just come down with them. Week 2, 11 targets, 34% first read rate, which is the highest on the team, higher than Amon-Ra St. Brown, higher than Sam Laporta. And it's more than just the deep threats. He is getting used in the intermediate route. He's getting used in crossers. It's basically the MO of this Detroit Lions passing attack over the middle of the field. And part of the reason why Sam Laporta has not been as involved and his first read rate is like below 10% right now is because Jameson Williams is a real wide receiver in this offense. We saw Amon-Ra in week 1 not really get involved, and J-Mo had 9 targets. We're like, you know what? It's going to even out. Week 2, Amon-Ra had 20 targets, and Jameson Williams still had 11. Now, I don't think the Detroit Lions are going to be throwing the ball 55 times per game like they did last week against the Buccaneers, but right now, the way Williams is being used in this offense, he obviously has the trust of Ben Johnson. He has the trust of Jared Goff. And if they're designing plays like this, 34% first read rate is amongst the highest in the NFL. Again, being higher than Amon-Ra is just crazy. He gives you the over-the-top ability where he could go off for a 60 or 7-yard gain, but he's also giving you that consistency right now. 20 targets through 2 weeks is something that not a lot of wide receivers can say. So I know I talked about it, I think, on the Monday show about Rashid Shaheed is kind of like the poor man's Jameson Williams. The difference there is the targets, right? Rashid Shaheed is at like 8 targets right now. Jameson Williams is sitting at 20. So he gives you that explosiveness, but also week to week, you know he's going to be super involved in this offense. Going up against the Cardinals, who are going to put up points on everybody, but also get scored on by everybody. This is the perfect week to put Williams in your lineup.
Jameson Williams, every time he steps onto the field, I feel like a proud father. You know, it's just like one of those, you just believed and you never doubted. Jameson Williams goes out there and he just balls. And now we're finally reaping the benefits of a healthy, full season Jameson Williams. My sit of the week, Jalen Waddle. Now, this breaks my heart because Jalen Waddle is a favorite of mine. Miami's offense simply is not going to look the same with Skylar Thompson out there, and that's obvious. But the heartbreaking part about that is that it doesn't only affect the Miami Dolphins fans. Of course, it also impacts Miami Dolphins players and their fantasy managers. Now, as my dog bites my foot and she's absolutely going nuts, I'll say this. Jalen Waddle last week was locked up by the Buffalo Bills. Only saw 4 targets, brought in 41 yards. But the week before that, goes for over 100 against Jacksonville and had 5 targets on 5 catches. 5 catches on 5 targets. Seattle's secondary is really great. Tyreek Woolen, Devon Witherspoon. That's a great group. That's a great group of Go get out of here. That's a great group of cornerbacks. Jalen Waddle with Skylar Thompson, unless they run a lot of gimmicky plays, I don't know if he's just going to get the opportunity to be a relevant fantasy player this week. So for me, I'm sitting Jalen Waddle, understanding that Skylar Thompson's not a guy I want to trust. I know that it's going to be hard for all fantasy managers, especially with the capital that you use to bring Jalen Waddle to the squad. But that's just the reality while Tua is not going to be on the football field.
It really does suck because Jalen Waddle was one of my favorite players entering this season. I didn't draft him in a lot of places, but I just thought the bounce back was so obvious because of all the injuries. Of course, Tua goes down. So wondering how low you're willing to go to sit Jalen Waddle. Would you rather start him or George Pickens?
Give me George Pickens.
Okay. Would you rather start Waddle or Tank Dell against Minnesota?
Oh, one of those games where I trust CJ Stroud. If that's, I'll live by that. I'm not a type of guy that's going to go and trust Skylar Thompson just because I think Jalen Waddle's a better player than Tank Dell. I trust situation, and Tank Dell's
Okay.
always a play away.
So same breath, Xavier Worthy.
Ugh. All right. Now I think we're getting into muddy territory. Going up against the Falcons, though, I can see it. Nah, give me Waddle. I'm
I think I
taking
would
game.
also start Waddle. Last name, Rashid Shaheed against Philly.
Oh, Rashid Shaheed. Rashid Shaheed was almost my start of the week. I swear to God, he was almost my start of the week. Against Philadelphia, you want to talk about a guy that's always a play away, and he's kind of getting targets also, being seen. They understand that he's just too much of an explosive player not to force feed him targets. I'm easily going Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, I mentioned the targets. I think it's only like 8 or 9 through 2 weeks, but they've also like only attempted like 30 passes or
Yeah,
35
for real.
passes. He has like a 25% target share, so definitely good enough. Moving on to my wide receiver sit of the week. I feel like this might bite me in the butt because some of the underlying numbers are pretty decent for this player. But Amari Cooper going up against the New York Giants this week, he's just not someone I'm willing to trust right now. As I mentioned, the underlying numbers are pretty decent. 17 targets through 2 weeks, over 230 air yards as well, which is fantastic for just 2 weeks of football. But I think what we're seeing now is our biggest fear entering the season with Amari Cooper, same fear we had with David Njoku. There's just something missing when you see the connection with him and Deshaun Watson. When we saw last year with Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper was out there winning you weeks, putting up like 50 fantasy points in the fantasy playoffs, that was a movie. It was amazing. But with Deshaun Watson last season and this season, we just haven't seen that. So going up against the Giants, I think the matchup is fine so far. In week one, of course, Jettis can do Jettis things, but even still, he only had like 60 or 70 receiving yards to get into the end zone. Then week two against the Commanders, they don't really have a wide receiver you're that worried of. And Terry McLaurin's just been a complete bust this season. So a couple guys I would start over him just so you could get kind of an idea of where I would have Amari Cooper this week. Jamison Williams, my star of the week. Zay Flowers going up against the Dallas Cowboys in a pretty decent over-under. This Ravens defense has not been good so far, so Dallas should be able to score. They're going to have to play some catch-up there. And Rashid Shaheed, a guy who the target share is there, right? 25% target share. It does still feel a bit boom bust. I don't know if just his career is kind of stuck in my head, and maybe I have to just flip that switch into saying 2024 Rashid Shaheed. It's not the 2023 and 2022 version where it's just one or two looks a game, but he's actually being involved here. But right now, Amari Cooper at best is kind of a wide receiver 3.
And I don't disagree with you there. I will say I don't mind the matchup this week, but with the way that we've seen Deshaun and him not have a connection, the way that, of course, Joe Flacco and him did, it always will leave me with a bitter taste in my mouth thinking about that dynamic there. So Amari Cooper was one of those guys I was staying far away from this season for that sole fact. When I saw them early on in the season, when it was Deshaun and Amari didn't look half the player that he was with Joe Flacco. And with the way that Deshaun Watson has been, say it one more time, same with Pittman.
Like wide receiver 1, but like quarterbacks we just can't trust,
And it's sad because the talent's there. Amari Cooper has shown that his entire career. Michael Pittman has shown, even with a quarterback like Gardner Minshew, who maybe we shouldn't disrespect, second in the league in yards, the highest completion percentage. But of course, understanding where you're coming from, I agree with that. Now, let's move on to our tight end starts and sits. I'm going to be transparent with you, Joel. I'm done with tight end sits. We're not. How can you do it? They've been so bad, and then you just get one touchdown for 20 yards. There it is. You're a tight end 3. That being said, we ride this week, and I want you to hop aboard. Kyle Pitts, start of the week versus Kansas City. No team has allowed more yards to the tight end position than none other than the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, here's a tale of two cities. Take it as you will. Through 2 weeks, they allowed Isaiah Likely to go for 9 for 11 and a tutty, 26 fantasy points. Mike Gesicki, 7 catches, 91 yards, 16 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts this week, who has not been good. Here's the other half. First read target share, shout out to Scott Barrett, says is at 6%, down from 19% under Arthur Smith. Now, to compare that to another guy, in his rookie season, Brock Bowers is at a first read target share at 27%. Pitts ranks 39th among all tight end first read target shares, behind all three of the Steelers and Saints tight ends. That's sad, and it's concerning. However, if it's not this week, Joel, then when? But you know what? We go out on our sword and we vouch for some guys that just deserve it. Is he not separating? No, he's not. But damn it, the matchup's there. And if it's not this one, then honestly, I'm willing to say Kyle Pitts is droppable. But this week, he's my start of the week.
That's kind of how I felt last week going up against Philly. We'll see. You know, they're going to throw the ball against KC.
Are you riding or no?
No. I'm not. Listen, I like the call. I like the underlying stats. The numbers are there. My start of the week, my start every week, Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers, you can make a real argument he's tight end one rest of the way. I think you probably trust Trey McBride a bit more, but Sam Laporta not been involved, right? I think I mentioned 9% or 10% first read or target share in general. Dalton Kincaid has been terrible. Travis Kelce has been terrible. Mark Andrews has been everybody has been terrible outside of Brock Bowers and Trey McBride on a week-to-week basis. He's been amazing. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's leading tight ends in targets, yards, and receptions. Over 50% of his snaps are coming from the slot. He's off to a historic start. I mentioned it on the last show. I think he was number 1 or number 2 in terms of 15 receptions through the first 2 games of his rookie season. If you're able to get Brock Bowers, and I don't have him in a lot of places outside of like a couple of dynasty leagues, but I was a bit worried because, number one, rookie tight ends usually don't work, right? Sam Laporta worked last year. Kyle Pitts, he worked for real life. Even for fantasy, he wasn't great. He only got like 2 touchdowns. Most of the time, rookie tight ends don't work. On top of that, you're going on a Raiders team who is going to have Gardner Minshew, who's going to have Antonio Pierce, who is a kind of slow it down, run the ball type of guy. And you also have Devontae Adams, as well as Jacoby Myers and Michael Mayer. All of these guys kind of competing for targets. And right now, it's 1A, 1B when it comes to Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers. Tay has 2 more targets, 8 more receiving yards than Brock Bowers right now. He is the focal point of this offense, and he's dominating. Like, he went out there, dominated the Baltimore Ravens. So if you were able to get Brock Bowers, he's someone that is legit league winner. And if there's anyone out there, like I sent a trade offer in my league, I have Mark Andrews. I said, would you take Mark Andrews for Brock Bowers? Haven't heard back, probably won't get accepted. But I think I'm there at this point with Brock Bowers where unless I have Trey McBride, I am willing to give up basically any tight end to go and get Bowers.
And I'll say this. Shout out to our brother, Jer. He had the first 4 picks in our fantasy rookie draft, dynasty draft. Marvin, Malik, Rome, and thinking that he was sniping me because he knows how much I love Brian Thomas, he goes and takes Brian Thomas over Brock Bowers, falling to me. And now I might have the best tight end in fantasy for God knows how many years to come. So shout out to my brother, Jer. I know you're going to listen to this. I appreciate this. But last part of the show, let's move on to your guys' questions. We'll try and make this a decent amount of time. We'll probably run to, probably depending on how many questions we have. But let's read our super chats. Not sure if I'm about to quit out, but here we go. It was me.
Nestor Soto, 499, shout out to the donation. Should I drop David Njoku for Adam Thielen? Last year when Dalton was playing Thielen 8 and I had McBride as my starter.
Here we go. Apologize. All right, super chat. Nestor Soto, appreciate it. He says, should I drop Thielen or should I drop Njoku for Thielen? Last year when Dalton was playing Thielen 8 and I had McBride as my starter. Of course, that's a no-brainer, especially if you have McBride. And Njoku, who is banged up with Deshaun Watson, I want absolutely zero to do with that. See first if you can trade Njoku, if anyone's desperate for a tight end. But that being said, yeah, I would do my best to make that happen.
Yeah, Thielen in the one game Andy Dalton had that 300 yards was amazing, right? So I don't know. I'm surprised Thielen's even out there on the waiver wire. I feel like he got picked up in a good amount of leagues once Dalton was named starter. But the fact that you have McBride, I wouldn't be interested in rostering 2 tight ends. If you have an IR spot, put Njoku on there for the 1 week that McBride is going to be out on bye. But other than that, I'd rather have Thielen.
All right. Shout out to Jaden for the donation. Said, help, please. Should I have to start two. Terry McLaurin, Khalil Shakir, Deontay Johnson, or QJ. Yeah, it's that bad, but he lost Cup and Debo. Keep up the good work. Love the show. Listen, Jaden, we love you. Now, if we had to start two, QJ versus Pittsburgh, I like QJ because of the target share. No, thank you. Going up against Joey Porter, I do not like that one bit. Deontay is interesting. I am thinking about it because of Andy Dalton solely. Khalil Shakir versus Jacksonville is also intriguing. Believe it or not, I'm done with Terry. I'm done with Terry until I see Jaden Daniels more prone to throwing the football, especially pushing it down the field. If I had to choose two, I'm going Deontay and I'm going Shakir.
Yeah, I'm also going those two as well, especially if it's a full PPR or minimum half PPR. If it's a standard league, I think I might lean QJ just because the touchdown upside might be there for him.
Fair.
But if we're talking full PPR, Deontay and Shakir should eat up some receptions.
All right, Zeka, who is a fantasy reaction show truther, he says DeAndre Hopkins or Amari Cooper. I'm going to leave that to you, Mr. Dehls.
Yeah, this is the spot where I'd be fine starting Amari Cooper. DeAndre Hopkins, first couple of weeks, has not looked great. We already know about the torn MCL, so I'm not willing to go that low on Amari Cooper going up against the Giants. I'd start him.
Now, this was a good question that I saw earlier. Brock Purdy or Derek Carr? I'm going to leave that to you also because that's your start of the week.
I'd still be going with Derek Carr here. Brock Purdy's not a bad start by any means, especially going up against the Rams. They'll be able to feast on that defense, but the fact you're going to be down Debo, Kittle, of course, Christian McCaffrey, that makes it pretty easy for me. Derek Carr has been so fucking elite. I mean, they're talking about a top 3 quarterback in fantasy football right now going up against a very beatable Philly defense. I would start Carr.
I'll say this. I contemplated making Purdy my start of the week. My only concern with making him my start of the week over Joe is that this game gets out of hand quickly, and then Brock Purdy doesn't have a need to throw the football, similar to what we saw in week 1 versus the Jets. Now, I don't see any other questions, which, hey, oh, wait, actually, nope, never mind. That's it. We'll leave it there because I see someone with a giant head of hair in our group right here who I'm sure wants to say a couple of words. None other than Mr. Joel Moran. Mr. Joel Moran, how are we doing tonight?
I'm having a great night. I haven't stopped smiling since the ending of the Jets game. That's how happy I've been. I came here to ask you a question, Drew.
Yes, sir.
Actually, to make a statement.
Okay.
You can still get it on a wagon.
Hey, listen, I'm glad that this win moved you and Joel as much as it did because, hey, that was a hell of a performance, especially on prime time. But, hey, I said it week 1 and I'll say it again. Win a game against a team that outside people believe are actual strong competition, and I'll give you more praise than what I even gave you today. I gave you guys a ton of praise because it was a great win, dominated on both sides of the ball. Go up against Minnesota, go up against the Buffalo Bills, win those games. Doesn't have to be in convincing fashion either. Just go out there and win those games, and I will give you your credit. But right now, this was a Aaron Rodgers masterpiece. And we haven't even seen Garrett Wilson get active.
Oh, no.
However, I still need to see it against higher, better competition.
There's still a seat reserved for you on the wagon, my brother.
You
were getting me to bond to the Jets before the season. You fell off on them. It's okay. It's okay. Listen, I understand that. I was thinking about the comments you made the other day about how we basically got LeBron James. And when you said it, I was like, I need to see it first. I saw Michael Jordan tonight. I saw LeBron James. If we have Aaron Rodgers playing like that, Dehls, you saw Will McDonald?
Listen, I knew what I was saying. I'm not here.
Oh.
Was I here talking out of my ass? I never lied.
You know we got a better chance than the Bills. Let's be real. Our defense
if you guys
is built
are
to stop KC.
If you guys play the way you played tonight, yeah, of course. That's what we all anticipated coming in. But it's the Patriots, and their offensive line's beat to shit. And that's
Oh,
why
it's
if you're
terrible.
going to have to go up against the Buffalo Bills, a much better offensive line. Of course, we respect Minnesota and what Christian Darrisaw brings to the table, but it was evident this offensive line didn't stand a chance. Will McDonald taking that extra leap in his game, 5.5 sacks through 3 games, if I'm not mistaken. He has been absolutely amazing so far, especially with Hassan Reddick out. You lose Jermaine, and he goes and he performs like this. This is the performance you wanted to see. A convincing win against a team you should convincingly beat. That's
Dehls,
exactly what you showed.
are we gonna have to start looking at Jets tickets for this Broncos game? Or Drew, are you coming?
Ooh,
I would happily
I am
go.
with it. I
We
am
should go to
definitely
this
with that.
Broncos game in 10 days. That's what I'm thinking.
I will
I'm with that.
1,000% go.
Okay.
I will watch us lose. I will watch us get our ass beat.
Oh, we know that's
but I
gonna
will
happen.
happily go.
Yeah. We know that's gonna happen, unfortunately. Where you guys are at with your team. And how we just dominated the Patriots. Oh my
That's
God.
a fact.
Oh my God. No, we really did that. Listen, for all the people saying that the Patriots are not good, I'm tired of this, right? I'm tired of this. They upset the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow. In week 2, they almost beat the Seattle Seahawks, who they're going to be a playoff team this year. I mean, Dehls, we didn't just win. We dominated.
No, from
We
snap
dominated.
one, there was never literally not a second during this game that anyone thought, oh yeah, New England has a chance here. Never a second.
Not at all.
Quentin
That's
Williams,
why
too, by the way, Quentin was dominating this game. This was easily the best game of Quentin all season.
And I respect you coming into the show with some hostile energy, especially with the way that I have treated the Jets over these last couple of weeks. Fair. The process was there, though.
It's all
Their
love,
def-
Drew. I just want you to
Of
come back on a
course.
wagon. That's it.
Listen, I
know
want the
you
best
want
for
to.
you guys.
I know you
want the
want to
best
take
for
flight
you
with
guys.
us.
I want the best for the New York Jets because you guys are my best friends.
We're taking
However,
flight.
I have to see it against an amazing team. You
Hop
know
on this
me.
plane. We're taking
Listen,
flight. Hop on
I
it.
hope
It's
you
the
take
jet. We're
flight.
going.
and I-
We're
and I hope you
going.
guys
Hop
get
on
to
the
your
plane.
destination. However, once you guys go in there and you beat Minnesota, you go in there, you beat the Buffalo Bills, like I do every single time. I will give credit where credit is due, like I'm doing right now. I'm giving credit where credit is due to the New York Jets, who laid a beatdown against who I thought was a very valiant opponent.
How long do I have
didn't
to wait for this?
anticipate this defensive line of the Jets to wreak havoc the way that it did tonight, though.
The
It
Bills
was-
game.
Go ahead.
The Bills game. Is that your date? If we
Litmus
beat the
test.
Bills, are you buying Jets tickets? Are you
I'm
you taking flight?
Oh, am I hopping on the plane?
Are you taking flight?
Do
if
you
we beat the
also
Bills.
do you also beat Minnesota too?
You know what? We beat one of those teams.
One
Not
of
both.
them?
We beat one of those
Okay.
teams.
Okay. If you beat one of them, I'm more moved by beating the Bills. Like if you lose against Minnesota, I'm going to talk shit. But if you beat the Bills the week after losing to Minnesota, I will be there giving your acknowledgement of I beat an amazing team. I will do that.
Shoo.
That's how the Jets sounded.
Shoo.
I'll tell you what, Joel, I'm shocked with how well you're trying to welcome me back to the Jets community.
Joel,
I really am.
Geno Smith or Aaron Rodgers?
Well, we just saw it's Aaron Rodgers.
Just saw it's Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers is the top. That Aaron Rodgers is better than Matthew Stafford, Drew. That Aaron Rodgers is a top 5 quarterback in the league. That
Yeah,
Aaron
I mean,
Rodgers.
Yeah, same beat type shit, you know. The mobility was what moved me the most. The mobility was out of this world good from Rodgers. That's what changes everything.
He was 6 for 6 outside the pocket.
No, he
was
looked like
insane.
absolute sex outside the pocket.
The ball placement was crazy.
If
To
Aaron
Garrett,
Rodgers,
the touchdown.
yeah, the
That throw
pass
was
Oh
to
my God.
That throw
the
was
pass
fucking
to
crazy.
the pass to Garrett was one of the best passes I've seen in some time too. Because if it's even a hair off, it's a pick six. It's a pick six because that was Christian Gonzalez, if I'm not mistaken, either too.
Yes.
So I'll say this: did I anticipate Aaron Rodgers looking this beautiful week 3? No, especially after he looked week 1 and week 2. Not a chance in hell did I think he would come out here and perform this way. If Aaron Rodgers plays this way for the rest of the season, the Jets are in business. And the way that the Jets defensive line dominated again, hey, this is the team that you guys anticipated. But again, it's the Patriots. The Patriots offensive line. Not the win in general. The win is impressive regardless. But dominating on the defensive side, that's where I have to say it is the Patriots.
Did you guys see Drake May get into the game?
Yes, and I'll tell you what, he looked decent.
He did. He had a throw that was really cool.
That
He
throw
took a
over the
lot
middle
of
the
sacks
field,
still.
he did.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
the offensive line was
yeah.
destroyed. And that's with our backups. It was like all Jets backups at that
No,
point.
they are terrible. And I saw this tweet about how Jacoby Brissett is sacrificing himself for Drake May, and I don't think it could be more true. I mean, Jacoby Brissett is going to get injured pretty soon, and I hate to say that, but he's just getting beaten up in that pocket.
He's gotten hurt a couple. Like in that Jets game, he got banged up a couple times. I feel like every week there was at least 2 plays where he's grimacing, he's getting up, but he's in pain. This pass offensive line, it's not looking good, at least as a pass protecting unit.
It was a great business decision to just not have Drake May play week 1.
Yeah, he had what, four completions. That throw to Demario Douglas, I'm pretty sure that's the one you're talking about. I would have loved to see it happen a little bit earlier, especially because we knew once the fourth quarter started that the game was over. But at least we got to see a little taste of what could be from Drake May. He looked all right. He looked strong in the pocket, even though he did take a couple of sacks. But that just goes to show you there's a reason why although it's terrible wording, Jacoby Brissett's the sacrificial lamb. They have no choice. They know that this offensive line's not good enough to put Drake May out there, because we saw what happened when you put a bad offensive line with a great player. We just spoke about it on our pod with Trevor Lawrence. You kept putting a terrible offensive line in front of him, and now he's rattled within the pocket, creating bad habits towards his quarterback play. Drake May does not want to develop these bad habits. So Jacoby Brissett, who's been great at doing his job as, one, a mentor, and two, being a guy that can just go there, protect the football, not turn the ball over. Everything that Jacoby has done will benefit Drake May for the future to come. So it was cool to see Drake on the field. And for those people that were in the Meadowlands today, they were probably gassed to see Drake May's first taste of football.
So how far are you guys into your show right now? Are you doing your starts and sits? Because I need some fantasy advice right now.
Oh, well, listen,
the
show's over.
brother.
Yeah,
okay.
The show's over. But if you do need some fantasy advice, I will happily answer.
Give me
right
quickly your starts and sits. I just want to see if I got any of those players in my starts.
All right. Well, you'll love Joe Burrow. I'm starting Tony Pollard, Brandon Ayuk, and I told you Kyle Pitts. We're sending him to the crib.
Is this the Kyle Pitts breakout game?
If it's not this one, I swear to God, it's no other game. I hadn't been more passionate about a start or a sit, I don't think, over the 17 shows that we've done, or more than that now because of the season starting. But Kyle Pitts is getting fired the hell up, and if he doesn't play well, I promise I'm dropping him in every league I have him.
I almost dropped him this past week.
Thinking
about it is making me tear up a little bit because I don't want to do it just yet. But if he plays bad, I have to. I'm sorry, it's over. Dehls, who are your starts?
My starts: Derek Carr going up against Philly, Brian Robinson going up against the Bengals, Jameson Williams against the Cardinals, Brock Bowers against the Panthers.
Those are perfect. Hell yeah. I got like half of those players you named. Yes.
Yeah. Listen, Joel, you got to lock in on fantasy football. It's so much more fun. It's more enjoyable to watch the games and have something to root for that's not just your agendas. I will say it becomes a lot more stressful. Like a game like tonight, I have Ramondre Stevenson in like 4 leagues. I love him. And of course, you know that's my guy. He's been my guy for a good amount of time. Do you know how much it hurt to, on top of it, watch the Patriots get bent over, but on top of it, Ramondre Stevenson play like absolute dog shit? That's just the ebbs and flows of fantasy football. Sometimes it all hits at once, and then others you get played like tonight.
No, I play it a lot now. I just can't really talk about it. Like, what you guys do is just so difficult. I can't research and talk about it like at all.
What you do
like
for the pod is so much harder. I'm not even going to lie to you. I sound like an idiot when I talk about regular football more often than I do when we talk about fantasy football.
Fantasy football is so cool, though. I think we're about to go 2-0 in this girlfriends league that we have going on.
3-0, you're saying?
Oh yes, no. Oh yeah, no. 2-1. I might be 2.
Oh, you
I
lost
my first
one
week. Yes.
Okay.
So I would be 2-1. The Jets defense gave me 17 points.
Elite.
Damn.
17 points, man. Getting that production I can't ask for anything more. You know, I told Jess, she was thinking about dropping the Jets defense. I told her, just wait. Don't worry.
And Jess was also thinking about trading me Mr. MHJ. I would have loved that she would have pulled the trigger on that.
Oh, you were trying to get a lick on her, bro.
Listen,
you was trying to catch a lick.
She said,
she showed me the trade. I was like, that ass. I was like, really? I was like,
what was the trade?
It was Jaden Reed and Jamison Williams for Marvin Harrison Jr.
God.
And
that's not a bad trade.
I was like, Jess, he thinks we're gonna fall for them having a blow up week 1. Like, oh no,
Joel, that's not textbook. That's a textbook trade right there.
I would decline that so quick.
But of course you would because you know ball. But that is a textbook. Hey,
Jess. Yeah, sure.
You was trying to rob MHJ. I was like,
she was talking crazy. She's like, I want him off my team. He sucks. I don't want anything to do with any Cardinals. I'm done with Kyler. I'm done with Marvin Harrison. I said, okay, I take that into consideration. I happily take him if you're willing to offer him. 2 for 1. Thank you. Shout out to Riles. Now, listen, you can sit in on this super chat. J Sports Take says, which QB should I start? Goff, Darnold, or Caleb? Listen, Joel, this is where you can low-key chime in. You've been saying Caleb Williams. He's breaking out this week. Would you start him over Goff or Darnold?
I don't think I could start him over Jared Goff.
Okay,
I think this start is Jared Goff. Darnold, he could play well, but it's risky against the Texans. Caleb Williams, he could play well, but he's played bad the first 2 games. Jared Goff, he needs a bounce back. And we know he got the history to bounce back. And it's the Cardinals. Like, their offense is electric, but their defense, I can't name more than 4 players on it, I'll be honest.
No, I'm easily going with Goff. I mean, against the Cardinals, he needs to lock in. I will say, Cardinals defense, maybe Gannon's up to something. Not great personnel.
Maybe he's cooking.
Decent output, though.
Yeah, no.
So I say I'm looking forward to this performance, especially because the Lions are a respectable offense. But listen, Joel, if you want to keep shooting the shit, we can keep shooting the shit. But if you don't got anything else to say, we can wrap up the show.
You can wrap up. It's all good. I'm all good.
All right.
Here.
Well, listen,
go Jets.
That's gonna do it from us over here at the Fantasy Reaction Show. Shout out to Joel for deciding to pop out and have some fun talking about the Jets and a little fantasy football. We'll be back here, of course, on Monday night to go over the studs and duds of Week 3. We'll be back every single Thursday and Monday night, always after these games. But again, if you guys have made it this far, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so you know we go live like nights like tonight. Go and tune into the Joel Moran Show on his channel, the Joel Moran Show. Tune into the Weekly Blitz with him and his co-host, Jackson. What is it, Jackson McIntyre? Am I getting that correctly?
Yes, 100%. You got it, Drew.
All right, don't know if Joel's frozen or not, but all right.
I am.
Yours frozen.
Okay, but
another day at the office.
I was frozen, but then I saw you still talking, so I was like, wait a minute, am I frozen? But regardless, Riv Academy allegedly video dropping this weekend. Tune into that. That being said, yeah. No doubt he lied. But that's going to do it from us. We'll see you guys next time.